Operation Lone Star put billions of dollars toward border security, but can Texas sustain that level of spending?
How long can we do this?
We'll do it as long as we're instructed to do.
State senators look closer at the state's enforcement measures, and it could set the stage for new steps on the border.
If people ask me what keeps me up at night, I don't want to experience a world war like my father's generation did.
Congress is poised to make big decisions on defense and foreign aid. We talked to a Texan in a key leadership position about what's at stake.
The electric demand that's going to hit the United States and the globe is tremendous.
Demand on the Texas power grid rising faster than expected. We look at why Bitcoin and AI are getting much of the blame.
Produced from the Capitol in Austin and airing statewide, this is the award-winning State of Texas.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm Josh Hinkle. Operation Lone Star has dedicated billions of dollars toward reinforcing the border with state troops. But how long can Texas sustain that level of spending? That was one question state senators considered as they met to review the state's border enforcement measures. Ryan Chandler has a closer look.
Well, amid dropping migrant trends on the border and new executive action from the White House, the state of Texas says they're not backing down anytime soon from their own enforcement on the border.
We can hope for the best, but we have to plan for the worst.
Texas leaders hope to see a new administration in the White House next year. But one key question as lawmakers reviewed border operations on Tuesday: how long can Texas keep up Operation Lone Star?
If we maintain current funding and the administration in Washington does not change, Director, how long can we do this?
We'll do it as long as we're instructed to do.
But Director McCaul says sending personnel to the border takes away from public safety elsewhere in the state. He says he'll need more troopers.
Everywhere you take a trooper from is going to be less safe, and where you put that trooper at is going to be more safe. It's a law enforcement physics 101.
Meanwhile, Operation Lone Star is expanding. Governor Abbott late last month unveiling this forward operating base for National Guard troops in Eagle Pass. Some neighbors of that new base, though, say it's unwelcome.
There's millions of dollars being invested, but I'd rather have it spent on infrastructure. I'd rather spend on healthcare, on education.
Lawmakers acknowledging some tough choices ahead for funding and fortifying the border, as the future of immigration and the election remain uncertain.
The legislature will have some very difficult decisions.
And this testimony comes, of course, as Texas's boldest border enforcement action, Senate Bill 4, remains on pause in the courts. At the Texas Capitol, I'm Ryan Chandler.
Thanks, Ryan. Border policy is also a key issue for Texas Democrats. The state party held its convention earlier this month in El Paso. Congressman Colin Allred delivered the keynote address. He's challenging Ted Cruz in the race for U.S. Senate. Allred spoke one-on-one with politics reporter Monica Madden about his views on border policy.
Last week, President Joe Biden took executive action saying it was time to, quote, secure the border. Some critics have called this a ploy for Democrats, saying that he's trying to gain some political points before the election. I'm curious, what do you see in terms of the Democratic Party as solutions on this issue that has been politically dicey?
Yeah, well, my family's from Brownsville. My grandfather was a customs officer after serving in the Navy in World War II. I spent a lot of my childhood along our border communities in Brownsville and the surrounding area, and just came back from El Paso. And I can tell you that I've been saying for some time that we need to act. And so I'm glad to see some action. I've been critical of this president, but I also think it's time for Congress to act. And that's why I find it so frustrating that when we had a bipartisan effort to try and address what we're really dealing with at our southern border, which is largely an asylum issue and needs resources put towards it, resources to process people faster, to change the standard for asylum, to reject people as well, that was turned away by folks like Ted Cruz, not because they disagreed with the policy, because I think they wanted to have the problem to run on in November. And to me, that has to be outrageous to every Texan.
With the political realities of heading into an election year, this remains to be an issue for Texas and other border communities. What do you see as a path forward for Republicans and Democrats to come together and find reasonable solutions that address some of these core problems like asylum, which you mentioned?
Yeah, well, listen, I want to make sure that we have a secure, stable, much less chaotic border. And I will, when I am in the Senate, I will make sure that happens. But I think there's still time now for us to take up the Senate bill that was negotiated that has billions of dollars. And I want Texans to know this. Billions of dollars for border security that no state would benefit more from than Texas. For more CBP personnel, for more immigration judges, for more administrative personnel to deal with the increase in migrants that we've seen and the folks who are claiming asylum, about 90% of whom are going to be rejected. But it's going to take 5, 6, 7 years for that rejection to occur. That's what we're trying to address in that bipartisan Senate bill that Ted Cruz said no to and that I have supported. I hope we can come back to that. Because for Texas, we can't just kick this can down the road. We have to have a secure border now.
With how lengthy the asylum seeking process is, do you think reinstating something like Remain in Mexico would be a feasible short-term solution if Mexico were to agree, of course?
Well, as you said, part of that is that Mexico has said that they would not agree to that again. But that's just one component of the asylum issue. What we're facing here is that when you have the numbers that we've seen, you have the backlog that we have, then we have to have resources put towards this, and that has to be the Congress. That can't be an executive action because they don't have the funding for it. For us to hire more Border Patrol agents, to take some of the agents who are currently having to do some of this administrative work and put them back to what they want to be doing, and I've talked to them about this, to be doing their actual job by hiring more administrative personnel, and crucially, by hiring more immigration judges to deal with the backlog and also to have some of these cases adjudicated much more quickly. That is how we're going to actually address our asylum crisis that we're having at the southern border. And that will also send a message to folks who are looking to come here that this is not the proper way to try and enter the United States. That if you want to come here for a better life, for economic opportunity, the asylum system is not the process for that. That's the legal immigration system. And we have methods for you to try and come in that way. I want to see us funnel folks into legal pathways instead of trying to come here using an asylum system that really was not set up for these numbers or for the reasons a lot of these folks are coming.
You heard Congressman Allred call out Senator Ted Cruz for his approach to border policy. I spoke with a senator a few weeks ago. He put blame for the border crisis on Democrats.
I think there is nothing more important for safety and security in Texas than securing the border. Tragically, Joe Biden and Democrats, including Colin Allred, my opponent, who's voted in favor of open borders over and over and over again, they are unwilling to secure the border. But the good news is, I think November is going to be a very good election. I think we're going to see President Trump reelected, and I think we're going to see a Republican Senate and a Republican House. And if and when that happens, we will secure the border in January of next year, and it will happen like that.
There is much more to our interviews with Senator Cruz and Congressman Allred, and we've posted the full interviews with each of them on our website. You can see them now. Just look for the links online in this week's State of Texas web story.
But what has to happen now is we need to add new power plants to the grid.
Demand on the Texas power grid is rising faster than previously expected. We look at why some of the blame is falling on two growing businesses. Donald Trump makes his return to Capitol Hill. We talk with a Texas congressman about the meeting with Republican lawmakers and how it could influence some big defense decisions.
After last year's record-breaking summer for power demand, Texas power grid operators expect another hot summer with tight grid conditions. Energy leaders testified last week before separate state House and Senate committees. It came after ERCOT issued a report predicting a 12% chance of rolling blackouts in August, typically the hottest month of the year. Energy experts say the state needs more modern power plants.
A market redesign will go a long way towards helping us in the future. But what has to happen now is we need to add new power plants to the grid. Until we redo the market design in its entirety, Texas is going to be facing ERCOT weather roulette for the next 5 years.
Last year, lawmakers approved billions of dollars in incentives to build more gas-fired power plants. Pending projects would provide enough energy for nearly 14 million residential customers. But ERCOT CEO told lawmakers the state will need much more, in fact, nearly double the power generation the state has right now. Pablo Vegas told senators much of that energy demand comes from the expansion of crypto mining and AI data centers. Vegas said just one processor used for AI consumes enough energy to power a Texas home for a year. More of these companies are coming to Texas, adding demand on the grid.
From Samsung to Intel to Taiwan Semiconductor, all of them are developing these AI GPUs and are ramping up their capabilities exponentially to meet the demand. So the electric demand that's going to hit the United States and the globe is tremendous.
Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick called for more scrutiny of crypto mines and data centers. He called them niche industries that have massive power demands and produce very few jobs. Patrick said the state should prioritize energy needs of homeowners and what he called normal businesses.
I got to tell you, the world's on fire right now with two hot wars and a hot zone in the Pacific, and it worries me.
Congress is poised to make big decisions about defense and foreign aid. We talked to a Texan in a key leadership position about what's at stake. A Texas law toughened penalties when people get hurt or killed in a crosswalk, but it's not always enforced. Now, a new case could signal a change.
Former President Donald Trump returned to Capitol Hill Thursday to meet with House and Senate Republicans. The visit came as lawmakers gear up for elections in the fall, but the former president's influence could affect key policy decisions on defense and foreign aid. Texas Congressman Michael McCaul leads the House Foreign Affairs Committee. He spoke with our Ryan Chandler about the meeting and the potential impact.
A lot of news coming out of the meeting with former President Trump meeting with House Republicans. A lot of conflicting and unconfirmed rumors about what came out of those closed doors, but what were your takeaways?
I mean, he's an entertaining politician, to say the least, and made some comments that I probably wouldn't. But at the same time, I was more interested in his when he's talking about foreign policy. He talked about he told Putin, if you invade Ukraine, I'm going to hit you hard. And there was a lot of deterrence there. He told Chairman Xi same thing about Taiwan and his support for Israel. And so, I got to tell you, the world's on fire right now with two hot wars and a hot zone in the Pacific. And it worries me when I look at the situation today.
You've been one of the Hill's biggest champions for Ukraine and providing more aid. President Trump, we also hear he was critical of United States providing more aid to Ukraine, not just in the past, but also today. What do you think a second Trump administration would mean for Ukraine and for America's role in that war?
Well, people like Lindsey Graham and I talk about this, and he's talked to, the former president. I wouldn't say, he says that it wouldn't have happened if he were in the White House, and I tend to agree with that, but also, we have to give them what they need to win this thing, or at least push the Russians back far enough to have a ceasefire and negotiated peace settlement. That can't happen right now because there's no leverage on the part of Ukraine. Even today, Jake Sullivan is restricting the weapons that they can use to hit the Russians, even though I put in the supplemental that they must provide ATACMS longer range artillery. So it has not been managed well, but having said that, my advice to him would be to give them everything they need to help them win this thing, and then he can be the guy that comes in and being the deal maker that he sees himself as to negotiate a better peace and security agreement.
You just got back from a trip to Taiwan. In addition to gifting their new president a Stetson, a gift from Texas, what were your takeaways from that trip?
Well, it was right after the president's inauguration, president of Taiwan. We were greeted by a blockade, a Chinese military blockade of naval ships, aircraft carriers. It's quite disturbing, really. And it was a prelude of what they would do in the event of an invasion of Taiwan. So, they're getting more aggressive. They warned us repeatedly not to go. They sanctioned me. But, I gave the president a black Stetson hat, kind of a symbol of the West and, the rugged strength and independence of the cowboy, and he loved it, and they put it all over their news. And I think it was important for them to see a bipartisan delegation showing that kind of support for Taiwan.
Yeah, tangential to all this, of course, is the NDAA. Leader McConnell gave a stark warning on the Senate floor today about the needs of Taiwan. He warned that we have insufficient long-range missile capacities in that area, and that all those and more need to be added into this package. When you think about the NDAA, though, what sticks out to you for Texas?
Well, I think it's what does it do for the rank and file military, our troops? And it's really a quality of life family package that gives them a pay raise, gives them child care, medical care, mental health programs for those suffering from PTSD. And you know, I think the Israel-Taiwan stuff is important in there. Remember, in the supplemental, I put a foreign military financing package of $2 billion and also almost $2 billion in presidential drawdown authority for Taiwan. And that's important for the deterrence to ensure that we don't see an invasion in the Pacific and maybe one in Europe that's not unlike my father's generation, World War II. People ask me what keeps me up at night. I don't want to experience a world war like my father's generation did.
You heard Ryan and the congressman reference the NDAA. That's the National Defense Authorization Act. The $884 billion bill includes funding for military pay, weapon systems, and other defense needs.
A Texas law makes it a crime to kill or hurt a person in a crosswalk, but there haven't been many prosecutions. We look closer at one case and why a Texas family believes it could set a precedent.
The Travis County District Attorney's Office says an Austin man is the first to be prosecuted by its office under a new crosswalk law. The law makes it a crime to kill or hurt a pedestrian or cyclist in a crosswalk. The law has been in effect for nearly 3 years, but we first told you in January about the lack of enforcement across the state. As investigator Arzo Dost explains, families who have lost loved ones say Travis County is now setting a precedent.
As Tadre Anderson made his way to face a Travis County district judge in February, his case was watched closely by those behind a crosswalk law.
Good morning, Mr. Anderson.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Court records show Anderson was arrested after running a red light, striking and killing a 64-year-old pedestrian at Little Texas Lane and South Congress Avenue in November of 2021. Police say the pedestrian had the walk sign to cross, but Anderson was looking at his cell phone. Court records we obtained show Anderson originally pleaded guilty and was given 5 years probation, but that was revoked after he failed to report to his supervision officer, and he didn't pay court and other fees. In March, he was sentenced to 18 months in state jail. The case is a first in Travis County to be prosecuted under the Lisa Torrey Smith Act.
This sets an important precedent for the rest of Texas and for the implementation of the Lisa Torrey Smith Act.
The law is named after a mother who was struck and killed crossing the street with her son in a crosswalk and in a school zone in Fort Bend County in the Houston area in 2017. Her son survived. Officials say the driver was never charged.
I'll tell you something. When you have a 6-year-old ask you why it is that somebody could kill their mother without any consequences, without any law, that's a hard thing to respond to.
The Lisa Torrey Smith Act became law in September 2021, requiring drivers to stop for a pedestrian or cyclist in a crosswalk. If drivers violate the law and there's serious injury or death, they could be held criminally responsible.
Implementation is going very slowly.
After her sister's death, Gina Torrey founded Citizens for Road Safety Texas. The nonprofit is making sure the law is enforced.
Help us to help the people of Texas stay safe.
Tori was in Austin last month and spoke at a Texas Department of Transportation Commission meeting about the need for a grant to raise awareness.
This would provide staffing on the ground based in Fort Bend County to develop training materials on the new Texas crosswalk law and to go out and give those trainings.
Tori says the Anderson case will be an example of how the law is implemented for other counties. We reached out multiple times by phone and email to Anderson's attorney, but he says he has no comment on the case.
There hasn't been enough legal precedent, and so we are trying to assist people who come to us to connect the dots.
Arzo Dost for State of Texas.
Arzo asked the DA's office how many other cases are expected to be prosecuted under this new law. A records request shows 2 other cases have been filed under the offense of collision involving pedestrian road user in crosswalk. The Travis County District Attorney's Office sent us a statement saying our office takes any death or injury resulting from reckless driving as seriously as any other act of violence, adding drivers need to be well informed about new laws that protect pedestrians and cyclists to ensure everyone's safety on the streets. Thank you again for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle, and we'll be back next week to bring you an in-depth look at Texas politics.